All right, it is 6 o'clock, so I'd like to officially call this meeting to order. Thank you all for being here on such a beautiful evening. If you would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and I believe we do have Carla joining us by Zoom, but she may be coming in a little bit late. So we will begin. Have board members had a chance to look at the agenda this evening?
I move to approve the agenda for June 27th.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Hearing none, the agenda has passed. Now we will go over to the superintendent for his report.
Thank you, Board President Davidson, other board directors, community members, and staff. I just have one comment this evening, just around, we have summer programs going on, so we're out there providing support for our students all the way from first grade through 12th grade. We have reading credit recovery, we have reading and writing and math. We have some preparation as students go into high school, so we have some books out there, book club stuff going on that kids can volunteer into, all of our rising students into 9th grade, and then we are offering some math support for some students as they prepare for algebra. With that, so those students are well on their way, but I would just say if you're sitting at home and you're like, what can I do this summer? What would be really interesting? The Timberland Library is a really great place to go on down. They have books, check it out. They have other activities actually too, and some supports, so they always have some fun things. So I just encourage any of our families to simply just go down to the local library and check it out and see what's going on. So it's just another fun activity, and I'm pretty sure they got air conditioning there too, so when it gets really warm, maybe just land a nice comfortable spot there and hug something to read. So with that, that's just my public service announcement for this evening. That's it.
All right, thank you for your report. I did see on the OMS billboard that it said, be safe, be kind, be a reader. So I see that is definitely a message that they've got out there for our students this summer. Next up, we've got community comments, and right now I don't see any community comments. Are you signing up for a community comment? All right, we've got one community comment, so I will read the standard language around that before we begin, and then if there are any other people that would like to sign up, or if there's anyone that calls in, we can do that. As part of the regular school board meeting, the board invites community members to make public comments in person and/or by phone as conditions allow. If speaking in person, please follow the public comment procedure by signing in and stating your name and address at the podium when called by the board chair. If making comments by phone, please dial 1-253-215-8782 and enter meeting ID number 872-5618-1978. Each person is allowed 3 minutes to speak. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the board is not allowed to discuss items that are not on the agenda. The board will direct the superintendent to follow up on any items that arise during public comment as appropriate. The board will not allow complaints against an individual staff member or student in open session unless that individual has requested an open public hearing. Marilyn, Aaron?
Yes.
You're already at the podium. If you could state your address.
I live out Coquitlam. So I'm not going to be able to say everything I want to say in 3 minutes, but I'll stop and give it my best shot. This is to address the list of books that are proposed for 7th through 12th grade. I ran some of the titles, cross-referenced them to a list of book ratings that I have. It's a content-based rating 4 is suggested for no minors because it's adult content, no child under 18. Typically, this book rating has explicit sexual nudity, depictions of sexual organs and state of arousal, and obscene references to sexual activities. I really don't want to read those sexual activities in case there's any minors listening in the background if there's parents, but Like a Love Story is on the list for 11th graders, and it contains sexual activities, alternate sexualities, and profanities. It is rated a 4. Last Night at the Telegraph Club, and I can share this with you guys if you want to see it afterwards. I have no problem doing that. There's just some information in here that I'd really rather not read. Fortunately, there's no minors present, but if there's any littles listening at home, that would be horrible, because I would be appalled if my children heard this. Last Night at the Telegraph Club is also on the list. It's also rated a 4. I believe it's also for 11th graders. This book contains explicit sexual nudity and sexual activities. It goes into some pretty graphic details. Brave New World is a graphic novel. Somehow this one's only rated a 3, but there are pictures in it that are not appropriate. This book contains controversial religious commentary, sexual activities, sexual nudity, drug use, self-harm, including self-flagellation and suicide. That was quite disturbing. Eleanor and Park is rated a 3. That is on the list. This book contains sexual activities, excessive frequent profanity, and hate involving racism. For looking for kids to be more accepting, I don't think these are necessarily the best books to put in their classrooms. I'll Give You the Sun is also rated a 3. This book contains alternate sexualities, sexual activities, sexual nudity, profanity, and alcohol use. Looking for Alaska, along the same lines. The 57 bus is only rated a 2, but there is some questionable content in there. And then also, The Hate You Give is on the 9th grade list. It's rated a 3, but questionable as well. So, oh, and Long Way Down, if you want to add that to the list. They're all, yeah, not necessarily appropriate for our kids. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other community comments at this time? And do we see anything online? Do we see Carla online at all? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, great. I see you up there now, Carla. Thank you. All right, we will go into reports and recognitions. 5.01 is the overview of the proposed 2023-24 school district budget.
Good evening, President Davidson and Shelton School Board. I just want to start off by saying this presentation tonight is a draft. Numbers are still changing daily as we get, new revenue details in, and we're going through line by line on expenditures. They've all been input, but we're doing our double checking now. It does have to be submitted to the ESD by July 10th for their review, so we're down to a week and a half to finalize everything in here. By July 10th, when we submit it, I will be posting the actual budget document that comes out of the OSPI software, along with an updated presentation on our website, so it'll be there for public review. And then we also have a hard copy available at district office for anybody that wants to come in and pick one up at that time. We will also be advertising a public hearing that you will be holding at your August 22nd regular board meeting, so people can come and comment, and then we will hopefully be adopting that night. The budget does have to be adopted no later than August 31st. So there's just a little information before we get started. Oh, he already has me on my first slide. So enrollment, as you know, in the past, we've always budgeted enrollment very conservatively. In prior years, we've budgeted at 4,125 FTE, full-time equivalent students. This year, we have bumped the budget up to 4,150 FTE because, as you can see, we came in at 4,210.06 FTE for the final for 22-23. So we were above budget pretty well, so we felt comfortable by bumping that up so we didn't have such a gap because September through December, OSBI pays us our money based off the budgeted enrollment, so it's very conservative for those months. And then they move to actual beginning in January, and then they adjust accordingly January through August. So as you can see, that's where we ended. We ended up higher, so that's a good trend we're heading into. The next chart is where we have revenue right now in the budget. The total right now is $78,874,241. That isn't substantially different than the current year actual revenue. Our actual is $78,766,889. So you can see the difference as you're budgeting your revenue conservatively and then what actually comes in. So, you know, if enrollment continues in the trend, we will see an increase in funding in January show up. Just to describe where our pots of money come from, you can see the biggest section is the state general fund. That is our apportionment, which is generated based off enrollment. And then our local effort assistance also is in there, and that is when you pass a levy. If you're a property poor tax district, they do have a funding formula that they give you some additional dollars. This next year in 23-24, that is going to be about $2.6 million. It did go down a little bit for 23-24. Also in the general apportionment, the CTE department's funding comes in there, so you see that in there. The next piece of the pie is state special, which is approximately 21%. Our state special education comes in there. Our learning assistant program grant, detention center is funded in there, bilingual grant, highly capable, and then transportation funding for the day-to-day running of our buses flows in through that. Your next section is federal money, and it actually is going down a little bit from 22-23 because ESSER, we have been spending that, and so this will be our final year of ESSER money in 23-24. So, of course, ESSER is in there. We have federal special education in there, Title I grant, Title II grant. Our OSSI grants have been mostly state this current year, and they are all moving to federal funding next year. So that's a shift for us. Food Services gets their money from the federal government through child nutrition. Limited English is also in our federal funding. The little piece of other at 2.24%, we run co-ops. We have a special education co-op with Grapeview and Southside. We also have a transportation co-op with Pioneer and Southside. And then our feeder non-high districts pay a portion of our levy because they come in at the higher grade levels that they don't have. And then also our non-to from transportation, when we close our books at year end, gets moved over into that category per the state accounting manual. Local taxes at a little over 8% is our local levy that we just passed. And then the local non-tax is any investments we get off of what we invest in our fund balance, any resale that the schools do, PE uniforms, that type of thing. Donations, we have people that donate for different products, CTE. We have some people donating to Food Services to pay prior food charges, that type of thing, facility rentals, and then also the mitigation fees we charge for new developments, and we've got quite a few of those coming on board, so we have those dollars budgeted in there. Okay. I included in here the state apportionment payment schedule because I have found a lot of people think we either get all of our money up front from the state or it just comes in equally every month, and that definitely is not the case in a school district. You will see that it comes in at different percentages every single month. There are a couple months, May and June, that are quite low, 5% and 6%, and then we get the bulk of the money July and August at 12.5% and 10%. The categories that come in that way are basic education, special education, education, sorry. The detention center, our learning assistant grant is state funded, it comes in that way. Bilingual, highly capable, and then our transportation operations. Outside of this, our grants that we get, the federal and some of the other state grants, we have to spend the district money first, and then you wait 30 days for your claim to come in the following month. So you have to make sure you have a fund balance to be able to continue operating in a good manner. And then another little piece about our district cash flow. The cash does not come into the district per se. It actually gets deposited straight with the Mason County Treasurer. The apportionment that comes from the state actually gets transmitted straight to them. All of our monies are deposited with the Mason County Treasurer. We don't have a separate bank account. It's one of theirs. They invest with the state investment pool, so when we want to invest money, they actually invest it for us. We tell them how much to invest. And like I said, transmit. Local taxes are collected directly by the county treasurer also for debt service fund and the general fund local levy. So they go straight into there. Okay, now expenditures. And just so you know, and a lot of you do, all of these are dictated by the Washington State Accounting Manual for Schools. So we don't make up these categories. We are told how to place them, and the state auditor audits to these. So that's why they're categorized this way. Expenditures right now are running at $78,142,795. And as you can see, the majority of our budget is in salaries. It is actually going up in 23-24. It will be at 88.51%. And we were running in 22-23 at 83%. I will say this budget does include the IPD, COLA, whatever term you want to use, of 3.7% that the state is funding. And then we also have included bargaining costs in this budget, so they are all in there right now. Then of course, you have your supplies and materials. Day-to-day stuff is running a little over 5%. Your gas, your copy machines, paper for the copy machines, postage, books, all of that type of stuff falls in that category. It's consumable items. Purchase services fall into utilities, our insurance that we have to pay, liability insurance, any type of contract. If maintenance does anything that has to hire a contractor, that falls into that category. Capital outlay is 0.25%. The state accounting manual has that anything that has a lifespan of more than 1 year and costs more than $5,000 goes into that category. So you have very few things that qualify for that. If I have to replace the huge walk-in freezer at food services, that one would fall in there, but not much falls in there. And then we have travel at 0.14%. A lot of that is just mileage reimbursement to our staff if they're traveling between buildings or driving to a conference, that type of thing falls into that. So that's the way those are broken down. I have one more that's going to show a different method. So we have like 16-digit account codes that the state dictates that to, and one of the portions is an activity. So I've split that same expenditure out in the type of activity. So our biggest piece goes into instruction, which is almost 58%. Those are your teaching staff, and any extracurricular that we have falls into teaching for the state accounting manual. And then instructional support is your next one. That is part of our technology. Instructional classroom technology falls into there. Your librarians, your counselors, your nursing staff, anything that supports the instruction falls into there. Then we have food services at 2.9%. That's all the lunches and the breakfast and the staffing that goes into putting that together. People transportation is at 4.79%. Of course, that's our yellow buses on the road and the drivers, which we're hoping to increase that this next year. But it is funded on the routes that you are actually running and the number of kids you have on your bus. So we report that 3 times a year, and that's what generates that funding. Maintenance and operations, of course, is our custodial staff in every building, our maintenance staff that keep the buildings up and any supplies they need or wood, that type of thing. Utilities and insurance is at 2.9%, of course, that's PUD, Cascade Natural Gas, Hood Canal Communications, our cell phones, and then our big district insurance policy that covers all our vehicles and all our buildings. And then other services is motor pool transfers. We do have maintenance uses motor pool vans, and food services does, so we have to do year-end transfers in that category to get the costs over to them in their budgets. And then district-wide network services, so all of our big servers that run all our technology and the staff fall into that category. Public activities is non-to-from transportation. We have to move that at year end. And then if we have any facility rentals where people are using our buildings and get charged, falls into there. Principal's office is our principals, assistant principals, and their secretarial staff, and any supplies that they use in that category. And then central administration is at 4.28%, and that is pretty much everybody downtown that's doing district-wide services for the whole district. So those are my slides, and do you have any questions?
If anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, so I'm going back and forth in the slides and trying to do some math. And if I were to buy a school bus, what would that come out of? Because I'm coming up with a number that is less than the price of a school bus.
It doesn't come out of general fund. It's transportation vehicle fund is for school buses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I don't have those in the presentation yet because we're still calculating some of that out, but it will be posted on the website and sent to you prior to July 10th.
Okay.
So, yep.
Thanks.
That's strictly designated to buy a bus, is transportation vehicle fund.
I was just looking for a missing piece in all of this, and okay, it's
Yep.
actually missing, it's not me. Thank you.
Yep.
I had a question going back to the mitigation fees.
Oh, yes.
Have we, you mentioned there was still a fair amount of that. Is that still from those streets back there with the names of the spices? Or is that peppered now throughout the city with some of the other little houses going on? Nothing, no big developments have actually started yet, correct?
We have been contacted by, I believe, 4 developers right now, and the city planner, actually. I just talked to him at an Economic Development Council meeting, and one of them is probably coming online very quickly, so he believed in the next year we'll start collecting more fees. So we've plugged some dollars in for that.
Okay, all right, that's good. And just watching the salaries and benefits, you mentioned that's creeping up to about 88%, you know, and that, you know, in the back of my mind, I just keep thinking IT is very expensive. That's an ongoing expense. And, you know, we've had a presentation about the maintenance expenses coming forward. And, you know, that's just, in my mind, cutting it kind of close with some of those other looming expenses that we know are going to be coming down the road.
So I can tell you in one of my work streams this year in Roberts, we are working on a facilities, capital facilities maintenance plan. So you will see those items coming forward. But for this current budget for next year, we will be fine because those won't start yet. So we're doing the plan right now.
Brenda, can you remind me why it is that in November, May, and June, it is so much less than the other months that we get the state funding?
Those months you get typically some tax dollars are coming in. Those are your big collection months, and then your levy equalization comes in. So that is why the state built the schedule that way. The July and August was a shift by the state legislature several years ago, and some of you probably remember when that happened because they needed to balance their budget, and their fiscal year ends on June 30th, so they made that shift during that budget session.
Okay. Are there any other questions at this time? No? Or Sandy?
Guess I'll just ask one more. In this budget, are we budgeting for curriculum to be adopted next year?
There are dollars in there,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
We put them in typically every year, just in case something, so, sorry, but, because we didn't have some curriculum adoptions during COVID.
Right.
But I've traditionally rolled them forward just to have it there as a capacity, so.
And do we put a set amount in, and what is that amount?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can certainly get that for you.
I thought if it was a placeholder, maybe it was a,
Yeah, I've looked at so many
set number.
numbers in the last week.
I don't have the numbers, Director Tarswell, but we are really on our health curriculum is what's up on the cycle. So that won't be a huge expense. I can tell you right now, just because that's a low, the course is a secondary course, so it's not a huge amount of number, but we can mostly post that or some information to the board to answer that question. So just letting you know, it's not like some huge adoption like elementary math.
Yeah.
That would be overwhelming because you have to provide the professional development that comes with it. But for health, you're lucky to have probably 2 teachers at SHS that do health in general for the whole entire school, for example.
I had another question. You made a comment about how some of the state things were going to then come out of a federal grant. What were those again?
It's the OSSI, it's some school improvement, I can't remember the name of it. Wyeth probably knows what OSSI stands for, I use that acronym so often, but most of it was state funded this year, but we got notice that all of it is shifting to federal funding this for 23-24.
Okay, and that is a grant application that has to get filled out for that?
Bordeaux gets it, I'm going to do this off the top of my head. Bordeaux gets it, Mountain View, Evergreen High School. I thought high school has an allocation on the sheet I got, but Oakland Bay didn't get any, so. But.
There are special specific dollars for basically learning loss. That's not just related to COVID, but it's about just performance overall. So it's school improvement money that is separated by the state for those activities. They changed this about 4 years ago. So a lot of those activities used to be just directly relationships between the OSPI's Office for School Improvement. But now their oversight is with the district. I think is a better deal, so you can actually combine those dollars. They're not huge amounts of dollars. You can't buy a full-time staff member, for example, with them. So you really have to think through them. They're hard to sustain, and then rolling those in. But they do have to relate to the school improvement plans. That is part of the requirements for those dollars, and they have to relate to again student improvement on the areas for both on the academic side and then also any kind of discipline attendance, the same metrics we have within our own strategic plan and the same metrics that we use in our school improvement plans. So we use those dollars to align literally 100% with the activities that we're doing here within the district. So they're not separate activities, which is what a lot of other districts do. They're like some kind of side activity that's not related to the work that we're doing as a district or for the schools.
And then who is part of the application process? Is that district office staff? Is that the principals? Is it everybody working
so it's
together on that?
Mary Ann's office. Mary Ann heads those grants. They're really, the school improvement plans are the part that is the glue on those plans for that. Okay. So that's the accountability document. I believe the number of school improvement plans that don't align with those activities is something like over 80% for across the state. As you can see from ours, they are. And I think that's something that we should be proud of.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Lauren.
Never.
Are there any other questions? Carla, did you have any questions? I want to make sure I check in with you.
No, I don't, but thanks for asking.
Okay. Looks like there are no other questions at this time. Thank you very much for the report.
Stay tuned for more info on it.
Yeah. Okay. We are moving on to the consent agenda. We don't have as many items right now that school is out. We do have the proposed minutes and personnel report and some warrants on there. Is there a motion, or are there any questions?
I motion to approve the consent agenda for this meeting.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Hearing none, the consent agenda has passed. Looks like we've got 3 items under discussion and action items. First item up is 7.01. We've got the proposed 2023-24 Career and Technical Education District-Wide Action Plan, and that is with our CTE Director, Gretchen Meliska.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to stand here before you again tonight to talk a little bit about what we have done in college and career readiness, career and technical education, as well as where we're going. So just to remind you, we're talking college and career readiness aligns with our strategic plan priority 2, and career and technical education falls within that. So this is just a recap of what our academies look like at Shelton High School. Just a reminder that of what our pathways look like within each of our academies. This year we've worked really hard on our freshman academy to be ready for September. A lot of professional development has gone behind the freshman seminar class. Our team continues to meet on a regular basis to develop what that curriculum will look like so we can have a strong start come September. I'm really looking forward to that. It's an opportunity to introduce all of our freshmen at Shelton High School to each and every one of the pathway opportunities they have at the high school. And since I last presented to you as well, we've also had an opportunity to add an instructional coach both to the freshman academy, and we added an instructional coach as a combination into the health science and natural resource academy. So I'm looking forward to that work growing. And this slide is another example of the diverse amount of courses that we offer in career and technical education. Some of them are pilots and some of them have been around for a long time. We continue to align our courses with student interest as well as labor market data. And in the fall, we will begin a review of our Business, Finance, and Hospitality Academy inside the cycle. This is an example of some promotional material that was created in-house to help instruct our counselors, our teachers, and our students what pathways are within an academy. This is our MET Academy, and it's just an opportunity for them to understand what are the courses, what are the pathways, and what could that pathway lead to post-secondary. We'll be updating this on a regular basis as we align ourselves with labor market data, as we take our student inventory, and an exciting piece that's connected to our Med Academy is construction has begun on the lower level of the sub at Shelton High School so that we can turn that into student enterprise. So floor has gone in, paint will go in a few weeks, and our students will start their design projects on how to build out tables and storage, and eventually we'll move our student store in there. These slides are just a recap of what enrollment has looked like on a consistent basis. Each of our buildings has changed a little bit of footprint. OBJ, the 9th graders have moved to Shelton in that historical time. Cedar is growing and finding their identity. We continue to align our courses with compliance as well as solid teaching and learning practices for our student success. This slide is just a comparison. So every CTE program area has to have an advisory committee, as well as I do. So I sit on a regional advisory committee, and And each year we present, just like I'm doing to you, what our year of growth has looked like. And this was an opportunity to showcase how amazing Shelton School District has done in developing their career and technical education programs. You can see that we're really matched with our dual credit, our articulations, the number of industry recognized credentials. Shelton has done such an amazing job on supporting their CTE program. You can really see the growth amongst all of the districts. And I'm here tonight to ask for approval for my district-wide plan. It's a requirement from OSPI that I have a 4-year plan submitted every single year. So some of the highlights as I move forward into the 23-24 school year is we'll continue on a cycle of reapproval. Next year is skilled and technical sciences that's set by the state. We will evaluate each of the frameworks that we run inside those program areas. We'll update them, perhaps submit new ones based off of up-and-coming technology and the curriculum that really should be taught in the class. That's a 5-year process, so there's an opportunity for that to be a living document and then for us to update that with the state. We'll continue to train our academy coaches and support them within our freshman and our sciences academies. We will train to align to our standards in our content area. That is an ongoing opportunity for us to understand how to cross-program within CTE and how to cross-program across the district. And it also allows our teaching staff to go out in their advisory committees and understand what's happening in a region. What are the amazing things that are happening in a sister district, or what tools and tricks are we doing inside of our classrooms that we can share as well. We'll continue our inventory of our equipment, furniture, and technology. That is a really fun project, and we're knee-deep in that, and it is a substantial project as well. We are looking for storage solutions for Stagecraft and our Met Academy. Those are big items that those students and staff create and run through their programs. So we're always looking for an inch or two of storage. And facilities has been great about helping us solve those. Let's see. And like I said before, we'll implement our Freshman Academy for college and career readiness. And inside of you can see inside of my 4-year plan, it's a 16-point comprehensive report. These are just some of the highlights that we'll deal with during the year, but we will address all 16 points. Any point that we don't accomplish during the 23-24 school year, we reevaluate and break it down into smaller points for goal and move it forward into the next year. So that's really my presentation for you tonight. I welcome any questions or comments that you have.
All right, does anyone have any comments or questions at this time?
I do. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
We can.
Okay. Gretchen, I love the program, and I think you've done wonderful work putting it together. I'm wondering if a choice or a Cedar student would like to be involved in CTE. Can they do that and still attend the alternative high school?
They can. We work with both of those schools to adjust the schedule so that those students can come on the Shelton High campus, but we also have CTE opportunities at Cedar. We have limited opportunities at choice.
Okay. What do you have at Cedar then? Can you explain that?
Sure. So we have applied math and science. We are in the midst of rehiring our STEM teacher who teaches classes such as video production, computer science, broadcasting, leadership classes. Those are some of the examples.
That sounds terrific. I like how the program is structured. I've heard teachers talk about how excited they are about the Freshman Academy and that they're a part of it. Just one quick question about storage. The 2 high school buildings that are not being used, is that a place for storage for some of the large projects?
Oh, we are utilizing those buildings already, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
Thank you for that suggestion, but we are really utilizing those to our best of our ability as well.
Okay, that's great. Okay, thank you.
Lauren, did you have some questions or comments?
How impressive the CTE program is at Shelton. And I know in recent months, I sat in on a legislative work group where I've never heard a high school called out, but Shelton's CTE program was called out as a standard that other schools should be achieving. And they were trying to get us another site visit. I did not have the power of sway, but yeah, I was just really glad to be in there, and it's doing so well. So thank you.
Thank you. I really stand on the work of people before me, and I've had the opportunity to continue to blossom. And as we have opportunities to write more grants and more partnerships, it will continue to showcase the work that we do.
Yeah, I'm just very impressed with how much this continues to grow. And like you're talking about the dual credit programs, just the opportunities that our students have now, and doing the Drake scholarships or talking directly to students. One of the things that I consistently hear is the academies and the CTE programs are things that really have kept students engaged and open up ideas for career paths. And it's really incredible, the work that has been done and what you're continuing to do. And it's exciting to see the growth. I appreciated that comparison slide, just seeing how much we offer and how much that has grown in comparison to some of our other schools. And it's nice to hear, Lauren, that we were called out in a study group. Yeah, I love hearing that Shelton is, looked at as a positive thing for that. That's wonderful. So thank you very much for the report today. I appreciate that. Are there any other questions or comments, or do we have, because it is recommended for approval, that we approve her district-wide action plan?
But just before that, I just would like to recognize, thanks, Gretchen. It's one of the things that's not going to come out of this that might be coming off your comments, President Davidson, is just about partnerships. A lot of times for us, I think especially this year, there was a real concerted effort to move away from the siloed CTE. A lot of people think it's something over there. I think the Freshman Academy is one example, but is also our partnership with business about how the pathways in general, the master schedule for the high schools, all three, about how we work and get kids to be truly college and career ready. And if you just have CT up to the side, or we're just trying to plug it in without really thinking about how that really is about how all services are structured at our high schools and in OBJH, that it doesn't lead to the outcomes. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're recognized, is because it's actually using it in a way that's truly getting students prepared. We have ways to go, but I just think Gretchen and the team did a really good job of just moving it from just this to something that now everybody's got some good ownership into it, community and within the district. So I just wanted to highlight that, those efforts.
Any other questions or comments? Or do we have a motion?
I would say that, I'll just comment, I hear from the business sector a lot about, the enthusiasm that they have for the academy as well. And, it's well received, and I've always been very impressed and supportive of the CTE program here at Shelton. So with that, I am going to make a motion to approve the proposed 2023-24 Career and Technical Education District-Wide Action Plan.
I would second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the proposed 2023-24 Career and Technical Education District-Wide Action Plan. All those in favor say aye. 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 All those opposed say no. Hearing none, your proposed 2023-24 Career and Technical Education District-Wide Action Plan has passed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, item 702 is the proposed revised policy number 3241, student discipline. And we've got Lisa Markinson and Superintendent Jesse who will be speaking to this tonight.
Just me this evening.
Oh, just you. It is the second reading, and it is recommended for approval.
Yes, since the last meeting, there's just been one revision, is just simply the policy number itself. Previously, the previous version of this particular policy was labeled 3200. Actually, in watching the, making sure that the code's aligned to WASDA, which is what we're really trying to do as part of the updates to any of our policies and procedures, it's really 3241. 3200 is really back over on students' rights and responsibilities, which I had put into a notification of the board that we'll be following up on that coming to August about the students' rights and responsibilities, so it wasn't there. So there's more work always to do on the policies and procedures. And just the updates, there's been, I know that was mentioned last time, there's been a number of changes. Some of the WACs are no longer in existence. They come into play. So it's been a shifting landscape for sure, but we want to make sure that we get it, trying to again align ourselves the best in case somebody is moving from district to district and trying to even compare things or what's going on, they can more easily find it. So with that, really none of the other content or anything that's changed on this. We've also attached the procedures. I think it's always really good practice, especially on something as comprehensive as student discipline, is that something where we have our district procedures. What does this look like day to day? As I had mentioned before, a lot of it is related to the ability of due process and appeals process. What does that look like? Where does the parents go to? How do you progress the stages? And also just around our district philosophy, you know, and what are the things and way we want to handle discipline? Is it trying to, again, be in a most preventable stage at all? When students are suspended, they miss school. When we also have an opportunity to compromise our relationships with students and families. I think if you're an elder board director, you understand some of those emails that we do get about the frustrations for some of our families when their student is facing discipline, and about like, why is this, where does this come from? And so we're trying to broker from a place of prevention as much as possible, with also the understanding that if a student is truly you know, not safe to be at school, that we will follow through with obviously those practices, but at the same time providing educational services, which I think is really critical even while they're out from school, trying to continue to foster the relationship with the student and their family. And it is ultimately, I think, a really good practice is when they come back, what is the plan? And I know that that's an area that where it is in the procedure, it is something that I don't think we're following enough of. It's one of the things that I've noticed that I'm like, what's going on with this? And we're not, you know, it's a lot of time and effort, but the time and effort I think is put in again to how do you create success for it? What are the contracts that we start to build those students? And where is their incentive and engagement into the process, especially at the secondary level, which is where we would see, obviously, some of the more severe, you know, misconduct that we experience here at our district and any other district. So I just wanted to kind of call it that and kind of give a little bit of words of why we have what we have in our procedure. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions at this point.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in. Carla, it looks like you do.
Yes, I do. As reading through this, I thought it made sense. It was well spelled out, consequences and suspensions, and defined them very well. And it also talks about proactive, and I think that we have really worked on that in our district, the proactive model with our safe and welcoming schools. And I hear different programs. But there was part of it that I just love, and it's called the restorative practice. And if I could just read a line from this, it says, the restorative approach sees conflict or misbehavior as an opportunity for students to learn about the consequences of their actions, to develop empathy with others, and experience how to make amends in such a way as to strengthen the community bonds that may have been damaged. And it goes on about dealing with conflict and that student coming back in and building relationships again. I'm just wondering, do we have that piece in, or is that something new coming into the action plan? So my question is, do we have restorative practices in place?
I appreciate that question for sure. I think we've mentioned this before. There's a continuum of restorative practices. What some of us might understand, including the parents and guardians that are out there, is what we call natural consequences. I think the notion that restorative is something new, I think there's some wrinkles to it. And again, there's a continuum of how that can live in a school, but really is about how do you how do you have an ability to stop and reflect on what you did, an opportunity to learn from your experiences, and that we all live in community with one another. And so that is some of the work that I know has happened for decades. At the same time, I think we also have to remind ourselves, no matter what the new labels are and the new things that come to it, I think the restorative stuff that we're doing here in the district, which will be a training this August with all of our staff, is an opportunity to continue to build on, one, our relationship building that we have with our students. I know I've mentioned that multiple times. And then also it's really about what are the kind of questions we ask, right? And so that we can better facilitate not only the reflection for the student, but brokering of the relationships and understanding your impact on others, whether that's anywhere from disrupting something because you're making a lot of noises, to making other kids feel unsafe, or to damaging, of course, our beloved bathrooms. So to me, those are all the equipping the staff is really going to be about what are the kind of questions we're asking, and going through a series is really a first step for us collectively, as well as I know some other things that go on out there, student leadership, kids working others to help them understand their impacts on their community. And then my last start is where you start to progress, it is where you start to have things like student councils, things that where students have to answer to other students in a more formalized mechanism. Those are more in-depth, complex ways of doing restorative work. And it's not something I would ever suggest any district to jump into or for us to do without building those stages up through those kind of practices. And that's why it is in here, is to reflect our belief in it and to start doing that work. It's just wanted to, with a little detail of what it is and what it isn't currently for the Shelton School District.
Thank you. That is a really important piece. And I see how it is just being a part of a culture and a school or whatever environment, it's getting along with others. So as I talk to teachers, a lot of them are telling me there's no bottom line, that they're seeing some behavior in secondary schools that is disrespectful to the teacher, to other students, and they don't see a consequence. What do we say? What is the support and help to a teacher who feels like they're not being, there isn't a bottom line, they feel like the students are getting away with disrespectful behavior?
Yeah, and I think, I think you know this, every situation is different. I think sometimes people paint with a broad brush. You have to understand what's going on first and foremost for the student, and what their situation is, having that relationship, and behavior is an opportunity to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So as with any form of instruction, how can I individualize that or change or shift my professional behavior to best allow the student who's in front of me to learn from situations?
Mm-hmm.
I think my assessment of the district, to be direct, is that there are many other things at play that impact student behavior. Not only their home life, but also is about the engagement in learning, their ability to foster relationships with other students, and the relationship between staff and students. If any of those pieces, including the home life, are not in a really healthy place, I can anticipate that there will be student behaviors. And I think it behooves us as a district to really think through, am I looking to provide natural consequences and help the student learn, or am I looking for punishment? And so part of our challenge, I think, facing today, and I love this question, is how do we start to work together to get on the same page of how are we going to handle situations so I'm not surprised? How can I get support if I'm maybe just admit it that you're having a hard time, one, either reacting to the situation, or that you might not have the relationship with that student. That's okay to be in that space. And so I already know our schools are wrestling with that. We'll continue to do that. And that I would not want our staff to feel alone in it, because it is tough work. It's been going on my entire career. It's been going on in education about how do you handle these deviant students. But I have to say, that's somebody's child. And that student our job is to teach them. And behavior and social skills and how to manage your own emotions are truly skills that we are responsible for. And we got to figure it out. And then the complex lives that these students sometimes have and what they bring to us is the work that we sometimes as schools, unfortunately, are held responsible for, when in all reality, there are more professionals like mental health services that are required in some situations. I just wish we were better equipped all around for some of those more significant ones that do to get called out oftentimes within our community that do need to be addressed. It's not as easy as just like a suspension. It's going to solve its problem when there's this whole backstory that we can't share.
Okay, so to those teachers, we look at the whole picture. And yes, we're not looking, I don't think every teacher's looking for the ultimate punishment. They're looking for a way to cope with children with mental illness in their classroom, and children with anger or deviant behavior because of some malfunction. So it's a hard job. I just want to admit that teachers have a tough job out there trying to make everything work and teach their content level.
I would want to acknowledge that as well. But the more we can work the other part is just working as a team on it, because it is challenging.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Carla.
Yes.
Are there any other questions?
I have two. First of all, I understand that I live in a world that I don't understand, and we're putting our kids out there into something that I don't understand even where we're going. But if we get into the supporting students, evidence-based practices and strategies, the district will implement evidence-based, positive, proactive, anyways, oh, there it goes. Classroom behavior intervention support strategies that provide every student with the opportunity to achieve personal and academic success. In some of these examples, what would be an evidence-based practice that, I mean, I know when I was in 4th grade, we got hacks. That ain't a thing anymore, and for every good reason under the sun. But what would be an example now?
Can you give me a situation?
I don't know. I'm just there.
What page is that?
It's of the whole 3 of 29, and it just, I can't draw a line between the policy and the procedure, and I'm just curious kind of what's there. The follow-up question to that would be, and you can probably answer them both at once, is we're talking a lot about, you know, our behavior problems, that there might be 1 or 2 kids in a class and that we don't want to take away from their education, and we understand that we have to teach them for them to be successful and all of that. And I don't understand exactly where the line is for us. We want to keep everybody in class, we want to keep them all there, but if they became enough of a distraction that they're taking away from the educational opportunities of the other students, how do we bridge that, and where is that line? I'm sure there is one.
Yeah, so let me answer the first one, and I'll get to the second one. The first one is evidence-based practices could be anywhere from just as simple as how you set up your classroom. You'd be surprised about how the classroom environment is really impacting students. Anywhere from the lighting in the room to how they are integrated or oriented towards one another, how they can access information, the structured routines to materials, and how they might bump into each other a lot, like you wouldn't want that for younger students. And then you get into instructional practices too. I mean, the things of, are you exercising student voice? If you are a sage on the stage for 45 minutes with pretty much any student group, I wish you luck with behavior. I wish you luck with adults, but that's a whole other topic. And so, and then like when you start to get to some more problematic behaviors, is around, de-escalation strategies. Clear out and give space. I can tell you over the course of my career, having worked with students with disabilities, a lot of situations could have been prevented by not cornering or raising your voice or yelling or putting a kid into a corner, because more often than not, they'll come out swinging, and I can tell you who's going to pay the consequence. That's something around best practice, right? Like giving it some space, clearing out the room. A lot of our educators do that. They're learning some of those tricks. Sometimes you got to figure out the kid and understanding sometimes what their function is of their behavior. Why are they trying to get something or escape something? If you can work on that, that's a best practice, and getting some of those strategies on there. But man, I tell you, nothing ever substitutes a relationship. Nothing's going to substitute a really strong relationship with a student. To just know their story, strength, and need. The kid knows it, and no matter what's going on with them, they feel safe with you. You can do that, and that happens in, again, a lot of spaces here in the Shelton School District. To answer your second question that relates to, I'm sorry, can you repeat? You better help me out there on the second.
Yeah, that we want to keep everybody there.
Yes. Yeah. So that's one of the toughest, as I always like to say, some of the toughest decisions for any administrator, I'll just say administration, is the rights of the group versus that of the individual. Those are really tricky situations because for the student, you want them to learn. If they're quickly removed, it's going to be hard to learn from the situation because you're not there to learn from it or learn along your peers. To me, we have to rely, on our training with our staff on like a variety of situations is to make a judgment call on it. I've seen sometimes when those judgment calls are really inappropriate and caused a lot of damage. I've seen a lot of other situations where people did it so gracefully, no one even knows what's going, how much a teacher or a paraeducator or a counselor or a school leader is managing on situations and actually prevented something from happening. But if it crawls them to where the tools are running out and they've tried the things, then it's disrupting the educational environment to such a, any kind of prolonged distance of time, then that we do have to remove that student, or sometimes in some cases to play it the safest way is, again, removing the class sometimes to de-escalate, manage the situation so that we can get back to things as quickly as possible. And then just you look at frequency, duration, and intensity of behavior. Those are the ways we describe behavior. So looking at those factors, is this frequent? Is this something going on? Is this something really intensive that the student's exploding? Those are things that you would want to also know about that student from the past and what's going on for you to make a determination of like, is this going to just die out right now? Or is this going to play itself out within the next minute, especially if you think of younger students, or is it not? And in some cases at the secondary level, if some of our students are really explosive, if something really is going to go down, you're just going to get on it right away. So like there's no formula of like how much time or whatever. Again, the more you know that student and what some of their patterns of their behavior are around those three factors is going to help you make a better decision on the spot.
Okay. Thank you. The question number 2 is one I get asked by the public at large on a fairly regular basis, so thank you.
Well, and as a follow-up to that, that's where a lot of professional development is coming in with our staff, with teachers, so that they do know or have better ways to be equipped to diffuse or deal with some of these situations and what to do or when to get their principal or other building admin involved.
Yeah. So historically, the Shelton School District has suspended a lot of students. You're not going to suspend your way out of the problem. And I think where some of these questions are coming from, the questions from the community, coming from staff, challenging behaviors are going on a lot, and they're even escalated more coming off the pandemic. And it's a national phenomenon. We are not alone, folks, by any stretch of the imagination. What I would say is we've actually done really incredible work this year. And while some people might comment and say, you're just letting some of these behaviors go, I can tell you right now, our suspended rates, kids are coming to school, kids are engaging in learning, kids are wanting to read books. And if we can get them there, it's kind of like this parallel play. If we can kind of manage out of some situations, keep you in the school and start building relationships and engage you in this learning, you will watch students start to choose to, I think I'm going to take this book and escape, as opposed to, let me cause a lot of problems so I can escape the class. Because the function are the same. And some of our students will play it so they can get out of that. Now, I'm not trying to make light of situations. I'm not trying to say, hey, if students are violent, that they should stay in the class. I'm not saying that at all. What I am trying to say is, we have done some really good work. I think we've got a long way to go. Behaviors never end. The trainings never end. This is what I got my master's degree in. I can tell you I'm always trying to educate myself. Kids and culture shift. The kids, the way they reacted to situations before is not the same. So much content is happening online, the bullying, the situations, the managing of that has just changed literally in the last 7 years, massively. That whole phenomena, and how to, we sometimes as educators, unfortunately, are playing catch up, and to train our staff adequately and how to manage that. It takes a little bit of time. We're a little lagging and coming around. But I would say kudos to our staff, in particular at the secondary level at the high schools. They worked really hard on building relationships this year, and you can see it. And you can just see it and feel it. And that was one of the things that we heard loud and clear from doing the strategic plan about that. And I think there's always going to be some trauma and some other incidences, but I think we just got to get some more people equipped. And I'm well aware of some of those situations and some things we just have to change.
Thank you.
Sandy, did you have a question?
I did. Can you give us some examples of natural consequences?
Yeah, losing some of your abilities and your rights, your privilege, some of your privileges, and sometimes someone might have to go get your book and pencils sometimes for you. You may not be the one to be able to have a certain job inside your classroom. You may be the one that has to sit in a certain seat during lunch. Some of those things really do, it doesn't sound like much to some people. Kids are social human beings, and they like to have some of those things. That's what they have. Sometimes you restrict it, we talk about bathroom passes. Let's go there, and then sometimes you have to lose your privilege to go alone. And those are some of the natural consequences. You can also up it about apologies and some of the things that you have to do in order to earn some things back in the trust of your community. I mean, those are quite lengthy things, contracts that you have to create, which are part of natural consequences for me and for others. And when you make a mess, you sometimes have to stay after school to clean it up. If I could really do my way, if I could catch the kids that are damaging the bathrooms, I'd be like, I got a project for you for the next week, and I got your time. And that's what, then they understand about what it is when you cause damage, and then they can apologize to the kids that are like, I really wanted to go to the have that conversation. I don't think it's embarrassing, but I do think it's natural.
Okay. Carla mentioned, teachers and the positions they might find themselves in, frustrating-wise. Matt mentioned other students. But we've heard a lot from parents as well. And, they sort of feel like they're in a cycle where, maybe there's a contract, maybe there's a consequence, but then we seem to come back around to, no, incident number two, and, subsequent. And so you mentioned tools. When you start running out of tools, I kind of guess as you kind of go through a list of trying to scale up that consequence to be a little bit more important to that student, and I guess it's hard to say where that ends, but you have to make a distinction, like you said, between the rights of group and the rights of the individual. And, with a situation, and every situation is different.
It is, and I think there's just differences across developmentally, and again, you don't always know, and it is a frustrating thing. I don't think people have to realize, FERPA is real. I can't share what's going on for these kids. If some of the folks I think knew what was going on for these kids, it would break their heart. And I understand about the rights of the other ones, but I got to try to manage a little harder to get this kid to buy in a little bit more, and to help them learn how to get through some of those things. And in particularly at the elementary level, I just think that kids make a lot of mistakes, and our ability to try to work with them and have them learn from situations will help us out in the long run. I think some of the challenges come as kids get older, and the toolbox can get sometimes tough, especially coming off again this pandemic, because some of the habits, the thinking habits, some of the behaviors have been formed while students were away from school, and those relationships just weren't quite there, and that's been where some of those tools you do start to run out of ways to do that. So as I was mentioning before is, if I don't really want to be at school already, and I've been in a place where there wasn't a lot of structure and where I was maybe not having great relationships with adults, school was going to be a tough place, and that was happening for a lot of kids. And your tools, you're kind of teetering when they're not, you're just trying to keep a kid in school, and not escalate situations, yet provide enough expectations to try to get them to do the work. And that is, I think, as mentioned before, that's what makes it, I think, extra tough for educators, is trying to find that right balance on any given situation, and in particularly for some specific students that we know are maybe in a place that they just need a lot more support. And as a district, we've hired more mental health support. We're trying our best, but quality mental health support is really hard to get anywhere. And I just think that we're going to keep working as a team, and it's worked out well. I think this year, I think some people don't like the change of some of it, but I can walk across the schools and watch how some students who might have been tossed for a long time have an ability to learn after maybe a short suspension even, or an in-school suspension, as opposed to being gone for 10 days, which is an awfully long time, because they will find the other kids who are also suspended or in trouble, and they will create even more chaos. And then I'll hear about that as well.
Does any of the professional development focus on working with parents, dealing with parents, a toolbox to share with parents, or to utilize with parents? I seem to remember too, we did have a parent class, and I thought we had one here maybe in the start of the school year. Anyway, if not, that would be a question to have plans for some kind of parenting classes that would help go along with this restorative and natural consequence in discipline.
Yeah, and I think in particular, again, I think our school administrators do a good job of working with our parent group. I know not all of them are going to be happy about sometimes the outcomes, but I feel like, again, it comes back to the reentry, especially off of suspension, to me is a big deal. especially at the secondary level, to broker those relationships, because if you don't have those, that's going to be a problem. And I would also stress, which we've talked a lot with, again, our school administrators, is also around just getting earlier on it with contracts. I don't think we're utilizing them enough here. I think we sometimes wait for problems to happen when you know them, or we just write up a referral. We have students that have over 50 referrals in the school year. I'll be honest with you, as your superintendent, I'm pretty frustrated by that, because the referral is not going to solve the problem. I can write up a lot of things. Taking the time to figure out the student's story, strength, and need, and building a relationship with the family, those are going to be critical things. So I think for us, we need that. The parents and parenting classes is a good idea, and I got Mary Ann Marshall over there. She's hearing that, and I think we could easily, I'm sure some of our community agencies would also love to help support some of that work. I'm sure we do some things
We had it in
out
the
there,
past, and
but
it was
yeah.
through some of the outside agencies that came in, but specifically reached out to parents in the Shelton School District for different levels of things. I went to some of those when my children were younger, so I know that we've had them as a school district, but I don't recall having them most recently. And I do think they would be helpful, just having those opportunities. Just like we're talking about professional development for our educators, you know, or you're talking about how as educators they're caught off guard. I think sometimes parents are. Technology is moving at such a fast rate. As a parent of 2 teenage daughters, I don't always know the things that they're hearing and saying. I try, and I'm involved, and I try, and I don't understand everything that they're getting into. And, you know, I'm ridiculous because I'm on Facebook. So when it comes to technology, that's long gone for them. You know, it's like they've moved on to many other things. So, yeah, I think that any types of tools and resources and community services that can come in, I know we did some of those at the theater there on the Shelton campus when my daughters were younger. I've also been to some that were just held in the OMS, like cafeteria. But I think that'd be helpful.
Ultimately, our job is to try to create the safest environments for all of our students. We are also a educational organization, and so there's, again, this: when do you learn? When do we have to separate? And again, continued training for our staff, continued supports, continue to be on it. And you know, then it takes us time to get better at it, to collectively, not just in the classroom, but collectively as a system to manage these things. That's why when you see in this procedure, you're like, that seems a little aspirational. There are some things that are like things that we're just lifting off on, including some of the restorative practices this next year, but it should be reflective of the work we're doing now and in the immediate future. And that's what I think that the procedure side of this policy is trying to manage into it, because if we can keep our kids learning, it's gonna, again, I'm gonna keep stressing it, and we know there's story, strength, and need, it's gonna benefit us the most. So I got folks out yawning. I'm probably repeating myself at this point, but yes, I'm working on it.
I guess I would finish before we try to adopt this, but it's nice to see that we're not focusing so heavily on the what, but the why, and the understanding. And I'll say it 1,000 times that just being nice sometimes will go a long ways too.
Are there any other questions or comments at this time? And it looks like Carla, I knew she wasn't going to be able to be on the whole time. I'm glad she was here to be able to ask the questions. Thank you, everyone, for your questions and your comments. It is recommended for approval. Do we have a motion?
I would move to approve policy 3241 on student discipline.
I second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve proposed revised policy number 3241 regarding student discipline. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Hearing none, the proposed revised policy number 3241 has passed. All right, now moving on to 7.03, the proposed approval for the adoption of textual materials for literacy instruction in grades 7 through 12. And we've got Mary Ann Marshall.
Good evening, Board President Davidson, members of the board, Superintendent Jesse. This evening, before I actually move to recommend the book set adoption for the Shelton School District, I just want to review the process that we went through to get here to this moment. So this journey began back in February with our curriculum adoption committee. And they worked with grades 7 through 12, identifying the standards in ELA and going through books to recommend for each of those grade levels, 7 through 12. And they were looking at 25 books for each grade level, looking at books that not only could meet the standard at each of those grade levels, but also would be of high interest to students to want to read. Once we finished that work up in May, we moved their recommendations to the Instructional Materials Committee. And so that committee has worked through looking at those recommendations. Once we as a committee made our determination on those book sets, we put them on our district website, and we actually had the books themselves down at the district office for our community to come in and look at. We also had at the district office with those books just some community comment note cards that they could make any comments and give us their information to reach back out. And then here tonight, we're just here to request recommendation for board approval. So when we talk about an adoption committee, there are several committees. First, we have the curriculum adoption committee themselves, and they are responsible for, again, identifying books, book sets for each of their grade levels based on the standards. Then they are pushed to the instructional materials committee to review, and that committee is responsible to make sure that the curriculum committee, followed all law, policy, and procedures. Once they determine that has been done, then we put the book set list together for the board and submitted that to you for hopefully approval. Just want to review and go over the Instructional Materials Committee's recommendation, or their work in going through these book sets. They are not an adoption committee, so they're not recommending books. They're just going through the books to make sure that they followed, again, all policy, procedures, and laws. So what they got is they got a front cover, which would have the title of the book, the author, the grade level it was for, what type of genre it was, and what reading level it was at. And then alongside of that, they would have a summary of the book. After that, then we used the anti-bias tool from OSPI to go through each of those books, all 150 of them. And so we looked at each of those anti-bias tools for each book. Our Instructional Materials Committee members, again, were brought to you earlier in the school year for approval for their membership. They included myself as the Executive Director of Instructional Programs. We have Doug Peterson. He's a community member and pastor of the Faith Lutheran Church here in Shelton, and he is in the audience tonight. We also had Drew Bigelow, who is an 8th grade teacher at Oakland Bay Junior High. Tara Smith, who's a parent and second grade teacher here at Mountain View Elementary, and Valerie Norwood, who is a community member and parent of students here in the district. So based off of what our information that we got from the curriculum committee, going through that process of looking at each of the book summaries and the anti-bias tool, the list that was presented to you today, we would like to recommend for approval tonight by the board. And I'm open for any questions.
What type of response have we had down at the district office with the community comment cards, or just public coming in and looking?
At this time, I have not received any public comments. I checked with the front office this morning to see if anyone had come in and filled out any cards, and I have not received any emails. Any other questions?
I would just like to thank you for all your hard work and everyone that was part of the committee in organizing these books for the appropriate grade levels, and that there's been some concerns, and just recognizing that, you know, books do have to stay engaging at the grade levels, so maybe you might not feel that your 7th grader at the bottom of the list should be reading these things, which they never have to read anything, but making sure that 12th graders are also continuing to be literate and seek reading and engage with text appropriately. So, thank you.
So yeah, I guess that would be something to clarify. These are not books that would be going into the library. These are books that would be in the classroom. Optional reading versus required reading.
So these would be instructional materials that we'd use to teach our ELA standards to our students in what we would call lit circles. So the books that they would be using would be inside of the classroom. The ones that are, because there are so many, the rest of them would be held in a book room in the building. And so, for example, if I'm 7th grade and I'm teaching an ELA standard and using lit circles, and students would have a choice to choose from. Where in the past we've done like whole novel sets. With this new approach, students will have a choice of what book they would like to read as they move through those standards.
Do they have the option to read a book that's not on the list?
They have classroom libraries, so they do have the school library, they have the classroom books that are in the libraries, but for teaching the ELA standards, these are the instructional materials that they would use to use through book reading to teach those standards.
I guess I'll have one more question here. I was under the impression from somewhere that we would have, the books would be available for like 2 weeks to look at. As far as I know, it was only published or put on the website last week, so it's only been out 1 week.
So they were out last week on the district website. The lists themselves of what books and the authors, as well as the hard copies of those, were down at the district office for all last week, and the last day was today.
Right, but for 1 week versus, did I hear correctly that originally we thought we'd have everything available for 2 weeks?
There isn't anything in board policy or law that states how long it has to be open, but we felt out a week would give our community and our staff members time to look at the books.
But we've not had anybody come down and look in person.
We've had people come into the office and look at the books, but no one has actually filled out a card.
Okay. All right. And do we know how many people came in to look?
I do not have that number for you here today.
Yeah, I think the 2 points of clarity here. So here in the conversation, one is these are adopted instructional materials. So if I was an ELA teacher at the 9th grade level and I was teaching something, not all the students are going to read the same book. So I just would be clear that like not everybody's on a whole class novel. So we have to select things based on reading level and to some degree interest, but also what I'm teaching for the genre. So the literary elements are applicable to the type of books that I have in front of the students. If I would say if a family member had a dispute about their student reading a particular book, I would ask them to engage with obviously the teacher about that and about what's going on with the book and their questions or concerns. If there wasn't a thing, I would ask them to work with the teacher to find a substitute that was going to help provide something literary elements with an alternative task. I would caution against trying to do that. I don't think a lot of people would do that, but if that was the case, I think Director Tarswell, where like something was something for someone they didn't want to do, I think our job is to work with the family to find some kind of suitable alternative to it. Just understanding that there's going to be limitations to that when you're trying to already manage probably 5 or 6 different books for a class, having it and asking the questions that are related to it. But I wouldn't want to feel if somebody was listening in that they were like, oh my gosh, come you know, some kind of requirement that's going to hang over my kid who's going to fail the class because I chose not to have my student read that material, I would say, let's don't go there. Let's figure out a solution. The other side of this is posting it, having the books available. Getting the books is taking a little longer than we anticipated. It's been out there for, I believe, now, so whatever, 8 days. Having us for getting the book ordered is about getting the materials in on time to hit this budget cycle, because we don't have all the means for this. Is a hefty amount of money for the, you know, when you're talking about 150 books that you have to have across all the secondary levels to have available for them, and we had to receive those in this budget cycle by the end of August to hit we have to have in receipt of those particular books, and that is some of the pressure on us on this one. So I apologize about that.
The only question that I would have, and I understand it probably wouldn't work for this year, but are these books screened similar to like movies? So PG, PG-13, R, NC-17, whatever it is, so that we're not introducing young kids to inappropriate materials, or how does that work?
Well, I can tell you the curriculum committee, as well as the instructional materials committee, took that work very seriously. So when we got our book recommendation list, the instructional materials committee went through every single book, and they actually did their research. This group was a hardworking group. They put hours in. We had hours of discussion because each of them were given each of the book set recommendations per grade level with the front page with the anti-bias tool, and they went through each of them. And if any member of the committee did not agree or had additional questions about the book, we came together and had a discussion and did more research, because we do understand putting the book in the hand of a kid to read and what's inside is a big deal. And we took it very seriously. And I am proud of the work that both of the committees did in getting these lists put together. It wasn't an easy task.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask then, where did the original recommendations come from that then went to the committee? Is that something that's like a standard list for these grade levels that comes from an organization within education? I guess where does the original, like, what's put forward for the group to then look at?
So it first started with the curriculum adoption committee. They worked together with teachers, like at the 7th grade level, we had teachers work together to put together a book list. And so each grade level with teachers came together and put together that book list. And then the adoption committee, curriculum adoption committee, came together and submitted those book lists. So it was a compilation of not only the curriculum adoption committee, but also teachers out in our schools working to put those lists together.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe 9 or 10, how many books got ruled out, Marianne?
We actually screened out 12 books that the instructional materials committee did not think were appropriate. So we did not push all those books through.
Are there any other questions?
I guess I'm still a bit confused on the review process. I thought I heard in the beginning of the conversation they didn't have the actual book. They had a summary and the anti-bias tool. Then later on, I thought I heard that they did have the book.
So it was a process. The curriculum adoption committee worked through Book Source, where we went to identify books. So if they put together a book list, they got their information off of the Book Source website. They also did like Goodreads. They looked up on Amazon. So just to get as much information they could about the book. And then once the books that were recommended from the curriculum adoption committee, we purchased one book. So we didn't purchase book sets, but we purchased an actual hard copy for the instructional materials committee to look at. So we didn't actually, when we started this process, we didn't have the actual book itself. We were looking at online resources.
the proposal before us, is that an all or nothing kind of approval, or can we approve part and not others?
Well, leave that up to the board if it's you're ready to approve like 7th and 8th grade and recommending that for approval to go through, or if you need additional time, I would leave that up to you as board members to make that decision.
I guess the question would be, do we want any additional information on books that were mentioned as being possible, the books brought to question earlier? You know, there was a handful of books that were brought. Do we want more time to investigate those but approve the rest? Is that something the board
Marilyn,
would like to do?
Yeah, we can take a look at them after the board meeting. That's just fine.
I personally have looked through the book list, and I think that a reading student is an achieving student, so I don't want to take any books away. I think that this was a very thorough review. I've had training on the anti-bias tool, and I think that it's a very good tool for going through this, and yeah, so personally, I'm ready to approve. I'm ready to approve the book list and make sure that they're in the classrooms for this fall.
I would second that.
I would just comment that the anti-bias tool deals strictly with the bias, the issue of race and diversity and those kinds of things, not necessarily getting more into the sexual content that may be in any of the books.
Actually, the anti-bias tool does recognize those things. It'll go in to make sure that all students feel included, no matter their sexual preference, making sure that family members reflect families in the classroom. So making sure that, the books in 7th, I guess we're talking about 7th through 12th grade right now, but making sure that, all family types are included in those books. When you open the book, the images are, what people look like, what families look like. I think I answered that. Yeah. Any other concerns? Because I did it really recently, so I can.
It sounds like you've been fairly thorough too, Lauren.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, and I've read several of the books on that came up, and
Yeah.
everybody's gonna be okay.
Yeah, I appreciate your, taking the time to do all of this, to give us the information. I trust the Community Review Committee, so I am at the point where I would go with the recommendation of approval. So if we would like to make a motion and take a vote on that, we can do that. It wasn't a formal motion. She was just giving her opinion. Yeah, I know you did, and I was thinking that was nice of you to do that, but it wasn't quite the formal motion.
I guess I would just have one more comment before we move forward on this, and that would be, we have stated that you have stated that as a district we would work with a parent that might have an objection to, or a student that might have an objection to a given book. Is that written down anywhere that would be the case? I mean, I don't want to have somebody come to us, a year or two down the road, or maybe a subsequent superintendent even, and, find out that the parents are being told, no, there isn't a choice. How solid, how secure is this choice?
Well, I think we were getting down a slippery, it is a slippery slope. I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, to talk about textual materials like, isn't an appropriate request. I mean, I just don't want my kid to do it. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's a subjective model in that particular case. I think it's I mean, for me, Director Tarswell, I'd say you need to work with the families when it comes to, their own political or religious beliefs for their families and their values. And if it's not aligned, there should be a substitute. I cannot speak for other superintendents, nor would I suggest that we start to go down the road of, in particular, writing out some kind of policy procedure specific. Perhaps some procedure that says this is, these are the things that should be considered. You know what I mean? Like within that judgment. I'm happy to take that into consideration and move something back on it. But I don't have something today. I wasn't prepared for that.
Well, and it just occurs to me it could even vary somewhat from teacher to teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to make sure that if a parent has an objection or a student has an objection, that they do have recourse.
Well, I'm the superintendent. It can be on the record, since it's going to go in writing. There'll be a note on it that I would most certainly say that the school leader needs to help facilitate a conversation between the teacher and the student to find some kind of suitable replacement if it is an appropriate request to replace a book because the material does not meet their particular family value or for whatever reason, religious or political. I think that's a good place to be for us. And you get this in other areas, so it's. I don't want to make it sound like it's just on book sets. There's sometimes those things out there, and to work with the family, but the appropriateness doesn't just relieve the student from the responsibility to learn the state learning standard, which is, I think, really critical in getting kids engaged in reading.
And with Marianne, that's, I think, what you were saying with this, approval of 150 books, that there would be options. There are going to be multiple choices. So.
Multiple choices, yeah. It's not a whole class read anymore. So students would have choice in what they read.
Yes. Okay. Are we ready to have a motion, or is there any more discussion or questions? I know you were.
I motion to approve the adoption of textual materials for literacy instruction in grades 7 through 12.
And I still second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the proposed adoption of textual materials for literacy instruction in grades 7 through 12. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
I was going to say aye because we've given the parent and the student choice.
All right, thank you for that clarification, Sandy. So that is 4 ayes. I am not hearing anyone opposed. The motion has passed.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll get into board member comments. Matt, I'm going to start with you tonight. We'll start at this end, if you have any comments for us.
I really don't, other than I will tell you that the Timberland Library, the basement, is the coolest part of it. So that's where to go. That's it. Thanks.
Sandy, do you have any comments this evening?
No, I have nothing tonight.
All right, Lauren.
Thank you for sitting through all our comments.
All right, I guess that just leaves me. Thank you all for coming to the board meeting tonight. We do thank you for the public comment and for the information that you've given us. We will definitely take a look at all of that. We do have an exempt session tonight that does have possible action involved in it. So I believe we're going to be signing some documents, and then we need to go into our exempt session for probably 15 minutes. And if there is action, we will come back out into the public meeting for that action as well as adjournment. So thank you all very much for coming tonight. And board members, if you'll stay for a minute to sign some paperwork, and then we'll head over to the other room. We are back out of our exempt session, and we do have action. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the proposed bargained agreement with the Teamster bus drivers.
And I second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the proposed bargained agreement with the Teamster bus drivers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Hearing none, the proposed bargain agreement with the Teamsters has passed. All we have left is adjournment, if someone would like to make that motion.
I'll move to adjourn.
I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no.
Nope.
It has still passed. We are adjourned. Good night.